Hello there, and welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. So glad you're joining me here today. As you likely know by now, my name is Denise, and I get to host you here on the podcast each week. And before we dive into today's topic about using books to grow your equine business and introduce you to my guest, I will very quickly introduce myself just in case you and I are new friends, and then we'll dive right in. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and I am an equine business coach, which means that through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to work closely with equine entrepreneurs like yourself, dream chasing, passion driven, who serve the horse world. And I get to help you build and grow a sustainable business without burning out. I do that really through helping you get clear on what success means to you, and then to create a clear marketing strategy and systems in your business so that you can do more of those things that you love so much. And I also do that here on this podcast. And so today we're going to do that by way of talking about a unique area that I think some of you have probably thought about leaning into for your business. And some of you listening may already have a book or a few books with your name on them. And so this episode is for both of you, okay? If you're someone sitting here thinking, I've been thinking about write a book. I wonder if it's worth my time. Is anyone going to buy it? Is it going to help my business? Well, how do I do that? This episode is for you, okay? And if you're someone who, like I said, has already written a book or two or three, and you're wanting to know how do you turn that book into more opportunities for your business? How do you get mileage out of the book that you've already written? This episode is also for you because business coach and author Lee Baucom, PhD, is an expert in this area. He himself built an entire business around his own expertise, and he's helped others do the same. Understanding something super important from the beginning, the book itself is actually a starting point for so much more in your business. Now, I'll be honest with you. 99% of my guests on this podcast are in the horse world. And I do that on purpose because I know that you guys want to connect with people who get the horse world and who understand the unique nuances, and you can learn from them. But today, I still wanted to bring Lee on, even though that is not primarily what he does or who he serves, because I do believe that his expertise will serve you. Okay. He's going to help you to see that we can think beyond simply selling copies of a book and instead use what you do inside of the book and your expertise to create more opportunities for your business. All right. So let's dive in. I cannot wait for you guys to meet Lee. I think you are going to love him. All right, Lee, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Denise. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I am as well. Now, as we were talking before I hit record, the large majority of my guests know the horse world. And so I'm taking a step out and saying, hey, this is somebody you guys should know. He doesn't necessarily know the horse world, but he knows the book world really well. And so I'm excited for us to dive into this because I know that I have listeners that either have already written a book that they've self-published or that they have on a Google Doc that they want to turn into a book. And I know it's a large question that we're going to answer here, which is this idea of books and businesses and can really one lead to the other. But before we get there, I want people to know why I've invited you here and why I thought you would be a great person to speak into this. So would you share with us a bit about your background and your journey to becoming an author who also now coaches and helps other authors turn their book into a sustainable business?
So first, I'll tell you the horse part that gives me no credibility whatsoever. However,
Okay.
I
I
did
love
take
it.
horseback riding lessons when I was a kid.
So good.
And as an adult, we lived in Louisville, Kentucky. So we were around horses and the bluegrass and all of that constantly and went to the racetrack a few times. So I saw I saw that
I
side of
love
it.
it.
And my son did dressage for probably 4 years when he was a kid. So I
Okay.
don't know the business. I have been around the business and this
Sure.
now. So now to what actually I have credibility about. So, I actually was trained as a therapist, and that was actually while we were in Kentucky at the time. My grad school was there, and so I was trained as a therapist. Did a couple of masters, a PhD, all in that, and was discouraged with what I saw in the capacities of traditional therapy to help marriages. And so, after you complain about it enough, you have to do something. And so I had to write something about that. And that writing began to formulate into the Save the Marriage book and now Save the Marriage system, which I put online in way back in the last century, back in 1999. So it was way off back in the
You were
infancy
in
of
the early days, right?
early days. Not quite at the
That
earliest,
wasn't
but
super early. I'm totally teasing. But for my
it's
kids, my
pretty early.
generation, when we start to say 19 something, then my
Yeah.
kids are like, "Yes, back
Yeah,
when
roll the
dinosaurs
eyes
roamed." Yeah.
forever
Mhm.
ago, yes. Well,
Yeah.
mine do too. So, and so that was so last century, but, it was out, and it grew a business by accident at first. And so then I began to be more intentional about that, and that led to 7 books and a number of online courses and a couple of podcasts and things like that. And along the way, I started having conversations with authors who thought that they were done when they were done with the book. And I kept saying, "You're just getting started." And so a lot of times they would say, "Oh, I think I'm 80 or 90% done." I'm like, "You're 5% started. You're
Oh my
just
gosh, yeah.
getting rolling if you want to be." And
Yeah.
so years ago, I was with at a publisher's event that I was actually helping my publisher to put on after having been to one. And so they gave me all the books of all the people who were there. One of them was really striking, and I sat down with this person during the conference, and I said, "Hey, so what are you going to do with the book?" And he looked at me and said, "What do you mean? What am I wrote it." And I said, "No, but what are you going to do now with it?"
Mhm.
And he just looked at me blankly and said, "I'm waiting for the sales." And so my thing is, okay, I mean, you do you, and I'll keep doing my thing. And
Yeah.
then last night he came to me at a dinner that we had and said, "So what were you asking me?" And we started having a conversation about how a book can form a business, how that process can build a business out, how it had happened for me, and how I watched it with others. And I've had that conversation a number of times. So there are 2 sides to that. One are the fact that a book can be what you do to build a business. And 2 is if you have a book, you can allow that to build the business for you. And so both of those are true. Many times people see that as an opportunity. I've worked with a number of people who use the book to build what they were already doing, and then
Okay.
others who built the business because they had the book.
Okay. Yeah, that's so good. And so now that's what a large part of what you're doing, right? So we're going to kind of use some of that to teach horse business owners who are listening today. Some, like I said, some of my listeners I know from talking to them, they've already written books and they've self-published, and we'll
Mhm.
talk about that in a second. And some of them are listening and saying, "I have methods, I have frameworks, I teach." Horse training a certain way, or I teach riding a certain way. Some are fiction, some are nonfiction. So I'd love to know from you, from the experience and other authors that you've worked with, is this idea of building a business from a book suited well to both fiction and nonfiction authors? Quick interruption, but we'll be back soon. You've heard me mention Take the Reins, my one on one coaching program for passion driven equine entrepreneurs who want a clear marketing strategy that goes beyond chasing trends on social media. Well, I wanted you to hear what happened for one horse business owner after joining. Her name is Amy, and here's what she said. Because what I do in the equine industry is so unique, it was very hard for me to succinctly communicate that. That's why I decided to get the support and expertise I needed so I could communicate it better from a marketing perspective. Having that clarity of my mission and my vision about my business has completely changed the marketing that I do, how I show up for my customers and my clients, and it helps shape my day to day because it's keeping me on the correct path of truly what my why is for my business. The clarity I gained from Take the Reins has helped me go deeper and focus on what my mission and vision is to truly grow my business. Now, the focus of my time and my energy and even my finances is going to the correct things. How good is that? That's what happens when you get outside eyes on your business, strategy from someone who gets the unique nuance of marketing in the horse world, and a personalized process that's focused on your version of success. Amy was just like you. a podcast listener. Before we even connected in a coaching capacity, she listened to the podcast and she took action from what she heard and the resources she downloaded. So if you are ready to go beyond DIY like Amy and you feel like a clear marketing strategy is the missing piece that's keeping you stuck, visit stormlily.com/reins to apply for Take the Reins today. I'll be in touch personally after you apply.
Suited best for nonfiction, but that doesn't eliminate fiction. I've had a number of people who were fiction writers who did a couple of things. Some of them use that to build a business about writing, like how to help
Mm,
people figure out their plot line and how to help carry it through. Now, you're talking about a subgenre, though, that's kind of important because when somebody writes fiction involving a particular area like the horse world, people are gonna read that and go, "Oh, they get it," and that leaves you an opening to then talk into that world and brand around that fiction, as opposed to someone like me that if I was talking about the horse world, you would probably punch all kinds of holes in it
right.
along the way,
Yeah.
right? So people who are drawn to that, and they're probably drawn to it because they have an interest in the horse world and horses in general, that would be almost a soft sign that you know what you're talking about, and that can
hmm
still be used. It's just much more clean coming from nonfiction.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay, so talk to us then also about publishing versus self publishing. So, working with a publishing house and a publisher versus self publishing. Obviously, since you published your first book, that also has changed in terms of what's available. So, for those that are listening, what differences should they be aware of when they're thinking long term? And what difference does it actually make when we think about the business side?
So let's actually talk about it. In publishing, as overall, there are kind of 3 points along the way. There's self-publishing. There's at the other end is traditional publishing. So we'll use that term, and then hybrid publishing. So each one has strengths and weaknesses. The traditional publishing, probably there are a couple of weaknesses, and traditional publishing meaning if you were to contact Simon and Schuster or some of those big names, that's what we're talking
Hmm.
about. Traditional publishing, where they give you a contract and sometimes something of an advance on the front side on what they hope will be the sales on the back side. And if you are a really top level with them author, meaning you've already shown that you can do sales, you might even get some marketing help from them. But that tells us something about most people that aren't going to get that. So traditional publishers give you a contract, will take care of the editing, the artwork, the layout, all of that. And by the way, that also means that they get to call the shots on what that content ends up
Hmm.
being. And for
Yeah,
some people, they don't want that. You're also giving up copyright. They own the copyright. So there are some pretty big pieces to that of what that means. But a lot of people just want that. The difference between wanting it and being able to get it are pretty substantial. It's a
sure.
very competitive world for traditional publishers, and it's only gotten more so. They get more and more, and they are trying to figure out who will allow them to come close to breaking even on their investment, if not make them money. So that's their deal. They're in it to sell books. That's
Hmm.
their whole thing. It's nothing wrong with that. There are just some limits, just like it is for everything. So we'll go over to the self-publishing. You have full control. And let me just put a subcategory. There is self-publishing, and then there's what I would refer to as assisted self-publishing. Like maybe you don't want to do the editing, the cover design, the interior layout, some of those pieces. There are multiple pieces in that, and so there are people who will do that for you for a fee, and
Hmm.
it's still yours. So you're still publishing it in, for instance, Ingram Sparks, which is through the Ingram distribution company. Ingram Sparks is one, and the other big one is Amazon's KDP program. That's the
Okay,
Kindle
yeah.
Direct Publishing, right? So
Mhm.
that's self-publishing, and you get to control exactly what the content is. And let me just say,
Mhm.
the other side of that is you are also responsible for what that content is. It comes
Yeah.
down to you.
Mhm.
The editing, what it looks like, all of those pieces are there, but you have full control over it. And that also means that you can, with full control, if you decided in a month to write a book and get it out, you could do that. traditional publisher. If you have a finished book today, it's not likely to hit the bookshelves for another 2.5 to 3 years just because of the marketing setup. So
That's
self-publishing, I can do it now.
quite a difference.
Yes, yes. Midpoint is hybrid.
Uh-huh.
Hybrid has well, let me say there are a lot of different hybrid companies, and hybrid often has a bad name. I don't think it deserves the bad name that it gets across the board as much as there are some companies that aren't so good. But hybrid, they take what you give them, so they expect you to give them the finished edited manuscript. They
Mhm.
often will do like the cover design, and they also will do the distribution for you.
Okay.
In return, you hold on to the copyright because you did all of that. And you also get a higher payout per book than you would with traditional, but less than you would with self publishing. So that's kind of the 3 points along the way. They have strengths and weaknesses. They are all ways of getting your books into the world. And so the question is, how does it serve the author? And that's the big question.
Okay. And so with your model that you talk about and that you teach people, you essentially just give them the options and say, what are your goals here and determine what's best for you? Or given what you've worked through with other people, what do you typically find they lean into?
A lot of people now move to self-publishing because they do have control. They don't have to wait for
Mhm.
everything else. So that is a big one, especially if it's what you're using in the business. It's not the only one, though. I mean, traditional publishing gives you a standing that you can't get elsewhere. I mean, it's in Barnes and Noble and wherever
Mhm.
else, and that's
Sure.
you can't do that as a self-published very easily. It's
Yeah.
certainly not distributed across Barnes and Noble. So lots of people come to me and have done self-publishing. It's just that you
Yeah.
could have done any of them and do the same thing. That 3-year wait for some people for traditional publishing and even for a hybrid who's actually doing distribution, their timeline is not a whole lot different than that because they are
Mhm.
still in the same process of selling the book and getting it distributed. So
Mm.
that's what
Yeah.
locks in that time frame. It's not
Yeah.
they're slow moving, it's the business world is slow moving.
And there's a process to follow.
There's
Tell
a
me
process.
this too, because I would imagine, right? You're working with people at a variety of places, and I'm thinking of one in particular. There's an author. I should have sent you her information to look at ahead of time. I wasn't thinking about it. But there's an author who, in the horse world, she started self publishing,
Mhm.
and then now I think she just recently launched a book, and I want to say I'll fact check that she's with Simon and Schuster now, but she was self publishing.
Mhm.
So, again, for those listening, as you share these options, it also doesn't mean, I would assume, you could speak into that one is what you're always going to do, right? One's a starting point, and that may lead to other things as you grow. I mean, even for yourself, right? Was your first book self published? I should
Mhm.
ask you that.
Yes,
It was, yeah. And
it
then
was.
you had 7 more books after that, you said.
So yeah, so one of the things that I do is I ask the question, "What do I need this book to do?" And then
Mm,
I'm gonna reverse engineer to what does it make sense to do?
yeah.
There are plenty of people, and I watch it. I'm talking with lots of authors that just want a traditional publishing thing because it somehow feels like it's the stamp of approval, but it may
Yeah.
be the wrong thing for them to do for what they're trying to do.
Hmm.
So I've watched it's kind of interesting in recent years. I've watched some people who have been very successful in traditional publishing who are now self-publishing. So it's not
Mm,
one-way flow to traditional.
that's
There are
interesting.
yeah, so it's asking the question, what am I trying to get to? But self-publishing does not prevent you, even in the book you've already done, to um, keep away from traditional publishers. Traditional publishers are watching because there's so many books. They're watching to see who breaks out, and if
Hmm.
you break out, they're happy to be a part of your world because you're a breakout.
Hmm.
And then there's some breakout people who are like, yeah, I want to control this, and so I'm going to
Yeah.
go the other way. So I really I ask people and suggest that people look at what are they trying to accomplish with this before they choose the method to get there.
I love that. As part of my coaching, when I coach horse business owners, it is start with the definition of success first, and then let's work back from that. So,
Reverse engineer, much
yeah.
easier. Yep.
So good. Okay, so let's talk about the process of building a business from a book. Now, I will tell you one thing I didn't put in my notes, but I've been thinking about this morning that I want to just throw in there for you is that we haven't talked about. And if it's not in your process, and I'm going to tail end it to this. So just to be aware, because I know for many people, right, when we talk about building a business from a book, when we say business, we're talking about income, right? So as you walk through these things, I would love to know, or if it's on the other side, when we talk about building a business, kind of the income categories that you're seeing or you're talking about. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, the myth that I think a lot of people may believe when they hear build a business from a book is all of my income is going to come from book sales. And
Yeah.
and I actually before this world worked with an author as well, Jennifer Rothschild. I don't know if you know of her. And she, yes, has books and Bible studies and that sells, and she speaks and she has events. And right, there are multifaceted pieces and parts of building a business from a book. So I'd love for you to speak to that. If it doesn't happen within your framework, then on the other side. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in fact, what we're trying to get people away from is thinking book sales.
Okay.
It's not that book sales aren't nice, it's just that given the odds, you're not going to have a sustainable world on the book sale, just given the odds. Are there people that break out of that? Sure. It's just that if you look on average, a book sells 200 copies on average.
No kidding.
200 copies is not gonna let you retire, unless it's a very expensive book. It's just not
Yeah.
gonna do it. And, if you say 200 is the average, that means that, say, there's a million book out there, and there is. Many books sell
Hmm.
1,000,000 copies or more. What does that mean for how many it takes to average it out to 200? So that even with that, it's not to discourage people as much as to be aware the book sales are not where you want to allow your focus to get stuck. There is, though, the thing that when you build your own business, that it often creates a kind of a flywheel with the sales of the book. So
Mm,
when you're
yeah.
doing, for instance, if you're out speaking, you're likely to sell more books, either by selling them in person or people going, I really like this. I want to get the book. And they're, while you're speaking, ordering it off Amazon or wherever. So it does give you that. And so the book allows you to speak, the speeches allow you to sell the books.
Hmm.
And that is true with most different business options you would have off the book.
Okay. Yeah, that's so good. All right. I love that. Thanks for addressing that because, yes, when people think building a business from a book, I think initially it's, naturally, right, that it's going to come off of book sales.
Mhm.
Okay. So tell us about lessons learned or things to know that you would share with my audience, given your experience about building a business from a book.
So the first thing is to be intentional about it. That's a big piece for me. And intentional meaning you're taking it a step at a time. Intentional does not mean you're trying to do 30 or 40 things at once, which is overwhelming and nobody gets done. But I did it by accident. Like I wrote the book and I thought, I mean, it'll be over there on the side.
Hmm.
And then the phone started ringing. I was just answering the phone on a
Yeah.
one-off kinda thing, and again, back in 2000, it was an actual phone on my desk that rang.
Yeah.
I had to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
So, but that allowed me to start thinking differently.
Okay.
This would be early days of in the coaching world, and I was coaching people around the world by phone, which is now standard for coaches, if
Mm,
it's phone or by, something on the internet. But then that was very rare, and so
mhm,
I was in some ways inventing a model is by accident just because I was like, "Okay, how do I do this and how do I get a payment?" and all that. Now it's much easier. So intentionality would have been a good thing for me back then, and I think is it important now when people say, "Okay, how do I want it?" So let's talk about the intention, like, what kind of business do you want? Where is the audience? And how does that fit into your life? And those are all important. One person I was working with, he had a book and it was okay. I mean, it was a good book, but he was only getting a few sales here and there. And so I'm talking to him and I say, so what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to do speeches. I'm going to do public speaking. And I'm like, you don't
mhm.
seem really interested in this and excited.
Uh-huh.
What have you done about this? And he said, I
Yeah.
spent thousands of dollars on the PR stuff and I've contacted people. And I said, what made you do that? And he told me about his friend who was successful speaking because of the book. And this friend said, you should do that. There were a couple of problems, as my guy told me. One, he doesn't like to travel. He likes to be around the house and with his family. He can travel, but he doesn't like to. Two, he
Mhm.
told me, I don't like public speaking. I can do it, don't like it. I'm like, what are you going to do here then? You're creating a beast. And so I just fast forward them 5 years from now. You're successful. You're flying around the country. You're doing the speeches, sure, making money, but you're doing all of that. And he said, that sounds miserable. And I'm like, you built the business the wrong way. Like,
Mhm.
what business would fit for my lifestyle? And so, for instance, there may be people, and I'm sure there are who are listening, who are like, I just want to be there with the people as they're learning to ride. That's coaching on some level. That's coaching and training. And then there are some who are like, yeah, I can only do that for so much. And so that might be a course or extra resources. I mean, there are lots of ways they can formulate that, but recognizing those pieces. Maybe somebody says, I really like working with more people. So maybe do a horse retreat or something like that. An event would be something else. So there are different ways you would set it up. But the question is, you start with is, what fits for my personality? Like, what would I want to do? What fits for my lifestyle?
Mhm.
Now, to your question, which was so good, what does success look like for you is an important one. And I have people tell me, like, let's think out 5 years from now. You're doing your successful business. What does it look like day to day? What
Mhm.
income are you looking for? How does that fit into your lifestyle? What are you doing? What are you not doing? And all of that helps them to kind of pin down what they're going to build towards.
Mhm. Okay. I'm curious within that, and if it's coming up, then you can say, pause, that's coming. But as you talk about this, you're throwing out different ideas for business models. So I just want to pause in case maybe I should have asked this question better earlier for those listening that are perhaps going, okay, wait, Denise, I thought we were talking about building a business from a book. Now we're saying events or courses or speaking. So could we pan out for a second, Lee? And would you give us a good picture of what it actually looks like to build a business from a book? And yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
I'll leave it
So
there.
most people will want to start with one thing and actually get their feet in that and get it going. But there are different forms that a book business would take. Now, the one, and when you say I thought it was coming from the book, anything that doesn't include these other things is going to be trying to sell the book or sell some
Mm,
derivative of the book. And there are plenty of people who sell the book, sell the kids' version of the book, sell the plush animal of I mean, all
mhm,
of that can come in, right? But that's still basically about the book. So now we take the book and ask the question, what can this expand to?
mm,
So you used a word early on, which I think is very important. You said framework. The framework in the book is often what authors have to really be clear about. Like, what is your core message? And so
mhm,
you name some, like, I have a specific way of training, or I have a specific way of whatever it is within that realm, right? That is your framework. And people who are at the point where a book makes sense have done enough mastery of what they're doing that they have a thumbprint that is the framework. They have a way they do it. And so, I often ask an author who's written a book and I'm like, what's your framework? And they're like, I don't know what you mean by that. Like, your book is your framework. You just didn't know it. So walk me through that and give me what, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 steps, whatever it is that somebody goes through that you're going to walk them through to get them to whatever success you're seeing. What does that look like? That's your framework. And that framework then begins to shape what you do, whether it is pointing at it in a speech, whether it is what you coach or train in, it is building a course that shows that, doing an event that walks people through it. I mean, there are different ways that could be a retreat for somebody, or this is another one of teaching people to teach your way. That's
mm,
another very clear one that would be there. But there are only a certain number of forms that might take for most people. They might find some derivative, but, live events is one. Speaking engagements is another, and that can be live, like with an audience right in front of you, or on Zoom. Another one. So teaching the course, teaching the event, then having courses, whether they are done live or whether they are done virtually, whether they are PDFs or audios or videos or whatever. That's courses. Direct practice, whether it's coaching or I'm sure there's some who are doing like vet services in a certain way or things like that, right? So that's hands-on, one-on-one. Then you've got one-on-one, meaning people are taking the course, but you're not present. So that's one off, right? And then there are the ones where you're involved live, like doing the event or speaking or something else that you're still present,
Mhm.
or are those virtual too, right? So there, I mean, it's live, virtual, how many people, and specifically how you're working with them.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's so good. Okay, sorry for the left turn. I knew you could handle it.
No, 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 that's great.
Okay, so back to the lessons learned and things to know. So number 1 is be intentional, and I do actually think that that question falls very in line with being intentional because, again, if you're working backwards, then you can see, okay, this is what I want it to lead to, and then build that into the book, which I would
Mhm.
assume that's something Jennifer that I worked with is very good at baking things into the book to make that a part of the overall experience and work, and being with her. So, past intentional, what else would you tell us?
Yeah, so it needs to fit you, and so we've already gotten to the person who chose something that didn't fit them, and so asking the question, so the intention is a piece of this, but more specifically, how does that fit for me in my life and what I want? Right? How does that fit in? And many people forget that. We've already named another one too, and that is be clear about your framework. If you can't be clear about your framework, it's going to be very hard to be clear about that when you're speaking to people about what you're doing and how you're doing it. The problem with authors, for some authors, is it's kind of like asking a fish to tell you about the water. They're surrounded by it, so they don't even recognize
Mhm.
their framework. And so
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've been in the midst of a conversation with an author going, I've never thought of it that way before. You're pointing something out.
Mhm.
That's just because I'm standing from the outside. I also have a pretty good eye for a framework, but I'm standing one step out to be able to say,
Yeah.
"Well, there it is." So, be clear about the framework. The other piece that I think is important is to accept that this is not a let's do 100 things at once. This is a step at a time. That's actually a big core piece of what I do is give people one thing a week to do. Um, had somebody recently that contacted me and said, I'm stuck. I've not done anything. And so I asked what happened, and they published their book and immediately jumped into this how to build a seven-figure digital
Yeah.
company.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you got to build your website. And it was 30 things. She said she took notes off the first two pieces of the course and she already had a checklist of 30 things and she didn't know how to do
Mhm.
any of them or really know where to start. That's overwhelming. And so being clear and taking a direct and simple approach of one thing per week that builds
Mhm.
out. You're
Mhm.
trying to gain momentum, not and jump into growth. And that's one of the things that comes out of a book is you can build a sustainable business. So to look back, 1999, 20, coming up on 27 years ago, that business is still going that I started back then because it fit how I do things, how I live my life.
Mm. Okay, that's really good. I know for those listening, and we talk about that on the podcast with marketing, is very much the same way. It's very overwhelming, and there are so many different ways and places, and yes, formulas and frameworks and things to follow. So that idea is really good. Now, I know for some listening, because I know from some of my coaching clients when I talk to them about making things simple and easy to understand, they're like, Denise, working with horses is not a framework. There's a field for it and those types of things. So I talk to them too about that there are still principles, right? There are principles that are clear and only to you and principles that you follow. So you can still teach people sometimes, I would imagine, because you work with a variety of authors, that sometimes it's more of a circular framework, not exactly like a ABCD type framework. Does that make sense?
It does. It's interesting when people push back against the framework thing because it's there whether even when somebody says, there's something by feel, I'm like, "That's a framework." I mean, I hate to tell you, but that's a framework. I was talking with somebody, she was interviewing me, she said, "I don't know. I mean, I am so against frameworks." And so behind her were 4 posters about how she did what she did, and I said, "So you don't believe in frameworks?" And she said, "No, I think that they get in the way." I said, "Can you turn around? Just turn around and tell me what's behind you. And she turned around and she looked and she said, I know what you're going to say. And I said, well, what I'm just going to point out is that's a framework. And
Uh-huh.
if you teach, and she said, well, I teach that one at a time. I'm like, that's your framework. I mean, that it is a
Mhm.
framework. So you can't do things without a framework. It's not possible, even if there's an intuitive part of this, and I understand, and I've talked to enough people in the horse world to know that there is this connection you have with the horse that is you're trying to figure out where you are and where the horse is, and the horse is doing the same, and all of that becoming one with the horse. Right. That's an intuitive process, but you just named a principle and you just named a framework of what the person's going to have to work for. That's what they're trying to get to, right? So it's still there. It's
Mhm.
just that sometimes we have a hard time because we like to think that we have just this way we do things, and we don't want it to be put into a framework. It's
Mhm.
helpful to have it as a framework because when you can look, just like this person, she had four framed posts behind her that were
Mhm.
great posts. I mean, it was great, except for she didn't want it to be a framework, and it is. You just can't not have one.
Mhm.
So I'm often about people making sure they have their systems in place to get it done. And whenever somebody says, well, I don't have a system, my response is, that is a system. It's just not a particularly effective one.
That's really good. Yeah, that's so good. Okay, I'm gonna throw you another question that wasn't on there because I know you can handle it. I would love for you to talk about audience building. So that is a huge sticking point, of course, for anything, whatever we're trying to sell, right? A lot of people are like, how do I find the right people? Yes, there's online marketing, but also, holy cow, there's online marketing, right? Like
Yeah.
there's, both. So what do you teach in terms of audience building, or what have you found to be the most effective for authors right now?
Part of this is depending on where your audience is. One of the things the big mistakes I see when people launch into something is they start deciding that they're going to go, for lack of a better term, fishing in a certain pond. And
Mm.
the fish they want to catch are not in that pond. If I want to catch sea bass, I probably ought not to go down to the lake down the road from me. That's the wrong location for that. I might catch something still, but not what I want, right? So we're asking the question, where are they? When I'm talking with business people about business things, LinkedIn might be where they choose to go. If we're talking about some demographic, you're going to ask the question, where do they hang out? So you're always trying to find, and this is we're in a new kind of world right now because of AI showing up at the beginning of every Google search or whatever browser search.
Mhm.
You've got
Yep.
this thing, and so statistics show that the traffic has dropped somewhere between 60 and 85% to what happened after is because nobody's going past that. And so it's no longer about just having a website. You are having to reach beyond that. People aren't going to easily find that organically. So those videos, which by the way, Horse World, great resource for having videos. Horses are
Mhm,
great to have on
mhm,
video. So where that you put those though, is it going to be Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or all of those, which is the nice thing about once you've created the content, but you're going to have to reach out. Some people are having a lot of success, and I can't speak to this on the horse world, Substack articles. Those tend to be
mhm.
more discoverable and shareable and all of that. So, not just Substack, but Substack similar kind of things. The newsletter world is another place. But it's basically asking the question, let's just to track back, where is my audience? And how can
Mhm.
I connect with them? Is it going to be an article, a video, an audio, being on a podcast? Those are all kind of ways to do it.
And would you say for those who listen those who listen and those who are like, "Okay, I'm willing, I can do it," but holy cow, again, so many places and it can feel overwhelming to be in all the places all the time. So, do you, especially in light of just this idea of book marketing and building an audience, do you typically advise or coach people, "Hey, let's write your book first and then build the audience," or are you more of the approach of like, while you're refining your message and your framework and all of that, let's be building the audience so when your book is ready, what kind of ways do you kind of coach people to navigate that?
A lot of people come to me because they already have a book. So
Mm,
it's
yeah,
the deal is done on that, and that's
yeah.
okay. It's just that it's easier if you're doing both at the same time for a couple of reasons. Um, first, you're when you're building it, when you're ready to launch, you got a built-in group. But
Mhm.
second, they can help you build it and giving you feedback. And so when you start getting some energy back, that's important to take in. What did they like or not like? That doesn't mean if they don't like it, you give up on it. But you at least listen to that because that is giving you a point you're going to have to deal with if somebody
Mhm.
says it. So, um, and so let me say first, you're going to get negative energy somewhere on the internet. That is the nature of the internet. I
Mhm.
stopped showing my wife the letters I get from people, the emails I get from people, because
Yeah.
she was just like, "How do you even handle that?" And so, as I have said to my daughter many times, I follow the philosophy of Taylor Swift and shake it off and move on. It's just what you
Yes.
gotta do, if you're
Yes.
going to do that and
Yeah.
recognize that the mission is beyond that,
Mm.
and so I'm always asking people to commit to whatever message you're putting out there, be
Mhm.
committed to the message, not to what people say to you personally
Oh, that's
or
good.
how they respond. There are people who are they're gonna like you and are not gonna like you. So here is the other side of that. That is what you're doing. You're creating funnels of people in and people out.
Mhm.
And if you're getting 0 negative attention, you're not doing anything that's getting a reaction. So when I talk with people and they're like, "Oh, I'm writing this book for everyone," that means you're writing it for no one. It's gotta be
Mhm.
in a voice strong enough for people to go, "I like that," or I don't like that. And if they like that, they're in your realm. If they don't like that, that's okay. They can be in
Mhm.
somebody else's realm. There are a lot of people in this world, and
Yeah.
you're trying to find your group. So
Mhm.
that is what holds a lot of people back, is they're afraid they're going to get negative pushback. So let me just be clear: you will,
You will.
if you're doing it right. You won't if you're doing it wrong. That's the reality of it. So see that as a help for you of distinguishing where you need to be and where you don't need to be.
Okay, that's so good. I love that, Lee. Oh, you're just a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate your generosity here. Okay, if it's all right, I'm throwing you another one. I'm trying to
Sure.
think, like, again, I sit here and think, what are the people that are listening hoping I would ask next? Or what are the questions that they may have? And I know that in that same vein of audience building, especially with organic social media being such a low percentage when you're trying to, you might have built up a page of 12,000 followers, but that does not mean your content's getting in front of 12,000 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I coach on is 100% to have an email marketing strategy, to have a way to get people into the world that you own access to them. Doesn't mean you have to send an email newsletter every week, but consistently building that relationship. For you, you don't have to agree with me. I am very curious. Is email marketing something that you still are helping people to go towards, or how do you advise them to keep that relationship going past the book, past the Substack, past the social media? Which, yes, I know Substack, you can technically own that, but it's
You
kind of
can.
a hybrid. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not quite. I mean, if they don't like you, you don't own
right.
it. But
Yeah,
you're right, and you can't email them off that platform.
right.
So that is kind of that hybrid. You're correct. People in my relationship space get an email from me every single day.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And
Uh,
that, when you say that, define that for me. When you say your relationship space, do you mean people that are in your program get an
yeah,
email from you every
so
day? Or if, like, I go to your website right now and sign up for something that's a free resource, I'm going to get an email from you every day? Which one? Or
correct.
both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, it's a lot of it's the same. Let me just point out there's some uniqueness. So that space is about people who are in a troubled relationship and they need help now. And
Mm,
so their window for how long I'm going to have their attention, it depends on how long that crisis lasts. But we're talking about something different than the horse world, where you may not need quite that consistency, but I'll tell you what I discovered, because I had somebody who said to me years ago, "You're not emailing enough." I'm like, "I'm emailing like 2, 3 times a week." And they're like, "Nope, every day." And you'll watch the people complaining about it go down, the reads go up,
mhm,
and the open rates have stayed very consistent. I also watch who's no longer reading, and I filter them out of my list regularly, because that tells me they're not interested. And so
mhm.
anybody can choose how far back in most email systems. So first of all, let's be clear here. This is not sending a BCC through a Gmail account. This is
100%.
actually,
Yes.
yeah, this is using something that is set up to do this. And there are plenty of
Mhm.
programs online. And if you're just starting out, they're even free for a certain
Mhm.
number of contacts. You should do that from the beginning because that's safe. It's also the right way to do this. So I can go back and say, "Oh, you haven't opened anything in whatever." I mean, you can go 6 months ago, 3 months ago, a month ago, a
Mhm.
week ago, whatever you want, and say, "Let's eliminate all those from my list," because if they haven't opened in, let's say, 3 months, they're not likely to open in the next 3 months. So, let's clean them out,
Mhm.
and that keeps the delivery good. And then you're invested in the ones who care. And that is the thing that I think people underestimate about that. They're afraid of getting people upset by getting another email. Most of us don't sit there and go, "That person emailed me yesterday and the day before and the day before and the d," or we don't do that. I mean, if I don't send an email tomorrow, I am likely to get next to 0 complaints that I did not send an email because I'm not there and our absence isn't noticed. Our presence is noticed, though, repeatedly, and they're like, "Oh, they're still there. Ooh, I like that idea," right? So you're still building that relationship. And the more often you email, within reason, the more often you email, the more likely they are when they see it again and go, "Oh, I liked what they said last time." So imagine I got something, a newsletter this week, and I hear back in a month from that person. I'm sitting there going, "What is that?" Or I'm just skimming past it, right? Because I haven't built the relationship. So your email is a relationship building tool, and if all you're doing is saying, buy my course, get me, the speech and anything else, that's not going to do it. My list almost every day is getting a simple message of, "Hey, I've got this podcast that you might like. Here's an article that I wrote that may be helpful for you." It's all, let me give you more stuff that may help you with where you are.
Mhm.
It keeps them connected with my message.
Wow, I did not expect you to say every day, Lee, not gonna lie. I do get an email from somebody, a marketer that does, email every day about, like, LinkedIn marketing and things like that,
Hmm.
and it has been interesting to I will say I evaluate more because I his name shows up in my email inbox every day. I evaluate more often than others if I wanna stay on his list or not.
Hmm.
But because it continues to have value in it, it's short, literally sometimes 3 sentences, but a link to something helpful, then I stay on it. But, yeah, it's interesting, and then there's another one who is just an entrepreneur space, and her emails, she probably emails 2 or 3 times a week, and sometimes they're quite long, and I'm like, so I do evaluate, and I encourage people, like, yes, evaluate, and your people are going to evaluate, right? So it's like you said, it becomes a filter, if they're a good fit for you or not. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
if all they're doing is just kinda glancing at your stuff, it's not helping you anyway. You need people who are like, "I want to be a part of this.
yeah.
I want to read more." Those are the ones who end up being customers, end up being a part of your ecosystem.
Mhm.
Those who, don't open and don't read, or they go ahead and take themselves off your list, they can unsubscribe on all of those programs. They have a place at
Right.
the bottom for you to unsubscribe.
Yes.
They're not in your list anyway. I mean, those
Yeah.
aren't the ones who are gonna be your customers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to honor your time. So I'm going to ask you one more question and then I'll let you include a closing advice because as you said that you're talking about articles and things to link to. So again, for those listening, and this can actually apply to authors or it can apply to small business owners, period. What do you see as the role in terms of being a content creator? So oftentimes people think I can just do this one thing and then they realize, oh, if I want to actually market, I have to become a content creator. And that becomes a frustration point for many, but also just like a blunt reality for many people. Like if you want an audience build, um, oh man, I said I was only going to ask one more, Lee, but I wanted to ask you about
You can ask.
advertising.
No, 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 you're good. We can go as
Okay, so I'm
long as you want.
asking this one and then one more. I want to talk to you about advertising because that is a workaround, I think, for some people that
Mhm.
have that problem with having to
Sure.
constantly create content. So, first, speak to that idea of being a content creator. If you're going to build a business around your book, you're going to have to become a content creator in your mind. And then address is doing advertising a workaround, a way that you can still build your audience without constantly having to create content.
So the interesting thing for me is, there's no way around the content. That's what a book is, right? That's what I pulled
Mm.
up a book. So I had somebody who contacted me and said, "I don't know, how am I gonna create content?" I'm like, "You got a book, right?" There's a lot of words in there that could be a lot of pieces of articles, of, different videos, audios, whatever you want to do, you've already created that. So start with that. You don't think you have to branch out of that. So the content is there to be mined. And so that's a piece of writing a book is content creation. I guess that so anything else can come out of that, and it doesn't have to be big. Many times I think people make it like, oh, I've got to have a big production. I still when I'm shooting videos, I've got a phone and I've got an external mic, and that's what I shoot on. And I do a very simple edit. I don't need it to be pretty because I'm trying to say I know what I'm talking about, and I'm not giving you a lot of fluff. That's my whole thing. Can I convince you
Mm,
that I have something good to say? So instead of getting caught up with what we're seeing as all the content creation, which has lots of special effects and edits and all that stuff, don't just be you. And if you don't like being on the camera, you can still talk as you're filming horses, for instance, or anything
mhm,
else, and
mhm,
that still is the content. So, I think many times we psych ourselves out that feels like that's a big thing, and it no longer is. When I first started, it was tough. You had to have a camera, and you had to have lots of other stuff, and I gave up on, like, YouTube, and then one day I went, "Oh, YouTube, I can shoot that with my phone and throw it onto YouTube." It's just so much easier now, to do any of that, so don't let that, psych you out before you get started. You've got a whole content list just in the
mhm.
book. I've written several of my books by doing an episode of a podcast and then going back and writing it, so you can see a lot of my content just out there on my podcast.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, that's good. Okay, so talk to us about advertising. What you're seeing, again, specifically in your world as authors or what you've experienced personally in terms of using ads as a way to generate leads and bring in an audience. And for some people, they kind of are hoping, right, that they can bypass that content wheel. What are you seeing?
So it's not bypassing the content wheel because when you're creating the ad, there's content. Whether it's the copy of it or video or something attached, there is content. So what it can do is speed up the process. You can buy your way onto people's feeds. So that's undeniable, and that's true across pretty much. I mean, that's how they make their money, right? Facebook
Mhm,
is not your friend, you're the customer. So they're just doing
mhm,
that, and the same with TikTok and everyone else. So there are ways to advertise where you have the ad written and it tracks and all of that. There are also ways of boosting what you're already putting out there, which is a good place to start. If you're posting something, I know TikTok and Facebook automatically say, "Do you want to post this? Do you want to boost this?" If you have a business connection with them, and they'll just ask you if you want to boost it. And it's very easy to do. For a few dollars, you can get a lot more views. Which, by the way, if somebody watches it and likes it, they're more likely to see you the next time you do it organically. So
mm.
it's often a way just to get started by saying, "Yes, I'll boost that." If you felt like you did a good job, there's some piece that you want to test it on what your favorite thing is and boost it and see where it goes.
Okay, thank you. That's good, helpful, practical advice. I love that. Okay, Lee, you have shared some amazing insights. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that we have not touched on that you think my listeners should know about building a business from a book?
Intentionality is so important and taking it a step at a time. I think just to nail down and to make sure that what you're building really does fit you, your lifestyle, and your audience. And you start there, and you'll be way ahead of the game for most people.
Yeah, so good. I love that. Okay, thank you so much. Before we go, tell everybody where they can find you online, website, all the things. Of course, I'll link to it in the show notes, but this is for those who literally are taking action right now. I want to go find you.
Yeah, so book2businessblueprint.com, and that two is not the number two, it's TO. So book to business blueprint, because that's what we're doing. Taking a book, we're building a
Hmm.
business, and you need a blueprint. So that's what we provide there. There's actually a starter map for people who are trying to figure out how to even start. That's free.
Okay.
You can see the link at the top of the page for that. I started a podcast there after the book. So what happens after the book, and I talk about my experience. Right now, I'm in a series answering customer and listener questions. So the podcast is there, that starter map is there. And then I have a program if people are interested of how you take just one step each week to build it out so that you have intentionality, that you have sustained growth, and that you have something that you can actually manage each step of the way. So that's booktobusinessblueprint.com.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we will link to that. And for those listening, go check it out. You can clearly tell that Lee brings a wealth of knowledge and breaks it down. And that is so, so helpful. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I wish you the very, very best.
Thank you.
All right, friends, I so hope you enjoy getting to know Lee as I did. And of course, especially, I hope that you are walking away with new ideas and opportunities for your own equine business. So please know that I will have the links to everything that Lee shared on the show notes for today's episode. So if you just go to Storm Lily, that's Storm, LILY.com/226 for episode 226, then I will have the links as well as highlights of our conversation in case you were not in a place to take notes and wanted to do so. I will have some notes for you there on the show notes as well. Okay. So I just want to remind you guys, one of the biggest points that I hope that you take away from Lee is that the book is not the end. It actually can be the beginning. I think that many people think writing a book is like the end goal, right? And for some, that may be the case. But for you guys who are here from a business perspective, your book becomes an asset that you continue to build on and build from. And there are some really creative ways that you can do that. So if that's something you want help with in terms of the marketing and strategy around that, please know I 100% would be honored and love to help you in that piece through one-on-one coaching. So you're welcome to check out stormlily.com/clarity. And I do 60-minute Zoom coaching calls. You can book them anytime. And so if you're someone who's like, you know what, Denise, I actually do have a book and I would love to make it more cohesive and a part of my business and know how to sell it on social media and make it not something I just created once that sits on a shelf, let's talk about that. Book your clarity coaching call anytime. All right. Okay, friends, again, I'm so grateful that you are here. If this episode helped you, or if someone came to mind as you were listening and you thought, oh, they have a book, they need this information, or they should have a book, they need this information, please do share it. The more horse business owners that are here joining our community and learning and applying what they're learning, the better the horse business world will be. And 100%, that's why we are here, right? To make the world better. Okay, guys. Continue to stay tuned, stay subscribed. I've got more new episodes and friends and new guests coming up over the next few weeks, and I don't want you to miss it. I'll see you soon. Bye.